Welcome, friends and fellow horse fiends. You've landed on Come Ride With Me, a podcast dedicated to helping you find harmony, joy, and success in your riding. I'm your host, Anna Fox of Equus Enlightened. This pod isn't about training your horse, but about training you to be the best partner for your horse. Listen to find out how I use my intention to direct my ride. You'll hear how I decide what to focus on, what to say yes to, and when to redirect my horse. You'll see how not getting frustrated or overwhelmed is the easiest path to sanity and harmony. So, what are you waiting for? Come ride with me. Hello, horse fiends. Welcome to your Straighten Up bonus episode. I hope you're enjoying these episodes as much as I am. In Straighten Up, I worked with a horse who gets a bit crooked, particularly on his left side. I talked about a basic exercise to help teach him to stay straight and balanced on his own. And just this week, I went to a riding lesson myself with the wonderful Felicitas van Nieuwenkozel and got even more feedback on helping this horse stay straight. My biggest takeaway from that lesson was me actually remembering to use my own body. As I said in the Straighten Up episode, and it's so funny when you hear your own words repeated back to you. It just goes to show how much having an eye on the ground can help and how we all just need to continue learning, because sometimes we think that we're doing something and our brain is saying you're doing it, but our body's not. Felicitas also made a great analogy about board and skiing sports, which I too often use with students who embark on those sports. The analogy is that you have to remember to use your whole body to turn. It seems simple, right? But it is hard to sometimes remember. I snowboard, so Felicitas suggested that I think of the stirrups as the board and kind of bounce and turn off of the stirrups as I would a snowboard. And even though I've made this comparison many times, the snowboarding or board type sports, skiing type sports, like that, to students, I've never quite thought of it that way myself. So it was really helpful, and interestingly, it had a relaxing effect on Namaste, who was a bit anxious in this new environment and this new person who he hadn't met before for a lesson. So, of course, with him, we focused on the base of the training pyramid, which I talked about also in the Straighten Up episode. In his anxious state, Namaste was carrying some good impulsion, but we needed to slow his rhythm, gain some suppleness with relaxation, so that he was able to then accept the contact and focus on his straightness. Then we could do some collected work. Every day, your horse might be different. And just like the phases of the aids, with the pyramid, sometimes you need to concentrate on just a portion of it, and sometimes you need to leave some steps out. This is why being aware of what your horse needs in the present moment is so important. If you aren't familiar with the training pyramid, I'm going to tell you, don't worry. It's an interpretation of the German scale of training. So it is a translation, an interpretation. I lived in Germany for a few years and was lucky enough to ride there. And I know from my German riding coach that there are some words that just do not translate well. And sometimes we would have these really funny lessons. My German is terrible now, but back then, as I was learning more, I would kind of have these lessons half in English and half in German. And it was quite funny, I'm sure, to anybody who would have been watching. So the base of the pyramid starts out with rhythm, and then suppleness. And I like to think of it as relaxation as well, because you can't have good suppleness without relaxation. Suppleness is not simply being able to wag your horse's head back and forth. Suppleness means over the back, in the joints, in the mind. The German word for it means sort of looseness of the body and of the mind. So it's a complex word that doesn't translate very well in English. Rhythm also is just as important for a rider as it is for the horse. And I think suppleness and relaxation too, because it's really hard to ride well if you are holding tension. Then we move up the pyramid to contact or connection. That is the horse accepting of your aids. I don't necessarily like to think of it as being on the bit or on the rein. That gets people thinking about their hands and the horse's mouth too much. I like to think of it more as the contact that you have with the horse, the rider has with the horse, and the contact that your aids and your cues make to make the connection with the horse. So we've got rhythm, suppleness, contact, and now we move up to impulsion, which is not running. This is not fast. We always hear in dressage lessons, more forward, more forward, more forward. A lot of times, this has people going too fast and running the horse past their balance point, which actually gives them less impulsion. Impulsion is power. I like to think of impulsion as potential energy, right? Just like something in physics will have potential energy. What is our potential to go on to the next thing? Is it, yeah, we can do it, or is it, ooh, I don't know? So after impulsion, then you have straightness. And I've always wondered why they're in this order, because I almost think that straightness should be first, but then I think about it and you could have a straight horse, and then when you add the impulsion, they could get not straight. And then that would mess up your collection. So that may be the thinking behind that. But I'm not actually sure, so I'd love to hear if anybody has any opinions on that. Impulsion, straightness, because the horse has to be straight to create that circuit of energy like we talked about in the last episode. The circuit of energy from the hind leg up through the pole and back to the hind legs creates this nice, beautiful circuit of energy. I like to think of it as like a bouncy ball or like an exercise ball, right? You could just sit on it and bounce because it's just a full circuit of energy. And if you bounce that ball onto a rock or a hard part, or you got not straight, the energy would slide out to one side or the other, right? But if you kept the energy going up and down straight on this bouncy ball, you would go higher and higher and higher and higher, and probably quicker, 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 and then that is collection. So just to review that, we've got rhythm, suppleness, contact, impulsion, straightness, and collection. I like to think of the pyramid as a template for each ride. It's a pyramid, not a ladder to climb, right? So all of these things, like I said earlier, could be part of a ride or could not be part of a ride, depending on where your horse is at that present moment. But there's no reason that a young horse can't work on bits of collection and self-carriage, or straightness, or impulsion, or contact, right? So when people think of the pyramid as a ladder to climb, and not a template for each ride, they tend to think of collection and self-carriage as like this ultimate prize, rather than something that each horse can do at any moment. The degree of length and collection will change depending on your horse's level of training, strength, etc. But it's always important to develop self-carriage at every stage. If you don't teach your horse self-carriage from the beginning, you're not going to be able to magically let them go once you've reached the epitome of the training pyramid. Once you think you've gotten to collection, and then you can say, carry yourself, horse, and they will magically float around the arena like a cloud. It doesn't work that way. You have to teach self-carriage from the beginning. And a big part of that is allowing them to learn, allowing them to have the choices to do something one way or another and realize what's going to work best for them. I don't like to think of horses themselves and our relationship with them as children, but I do like to think of horses learning a lot like children. And now that I have children, it's even more so because my kids are 5 and 7. And this seems to be like the place where a lot of horses are in the learning stage, right? From toddler age, probably up to like the teen years. And that involves a lot of exploration, a lot of boundaries that they need to find, a lot of trial and error. And if we don't allow our horses to think through those problems and realize their own potential and their own self-carriage, then we are constantly trying to manage what they're doing, and it just gets more and more complicated as you want to do more and more complicated things. And then you get to a point where you can't hold it all together anymore. So we really want our horses to be able to carry themselves and maintain their own rhythm and suppleness. And then the contact, and then the impulsion, and then the straightness, and then the collection. So the basic alignment exercise allows you to teach your horse this basic concept. And then you can progress this with your level of training. This isn't just something that you do once or twice and your horse figures it out and you're like, oh, they're going to be straight forever. No, they're going to lose. You're going to work on impulsion and they're going to lose some straightness. And we saw that a little bit with Namaste in the last episode. So then you may use a little bit more refined aid, refined contact to say, oh, but remember, I want you to stay straight. But you are still allowing him then to carry that straightness, and you are making the correction so that you can show him what you would like. Show your horse what you want them to do. Don't allow them to do things you don't want them to be doing. This doesn't mean that you are rude or mean or harsh with your corrections. It just means that you make them quickly. You set a boundary. There's no emotion involved in it. It just simply is what it is. We make the correction and we go on. I really think it's important to teach our horses responsibilities and allow them to have those responsibilities. And they are ever changing as their level of communication and relationship with you changes, as their level of training changes. They should be getting more and more responsibilities. They should be getting more and more confident. They should be carrying themselves more and more. You should not be working harder and harder. I often think of an interview that I read with Robert Dover, where he said something like, dressage shouldn't be hard. You should feel like you can sit up there eating a chocolate bar. And so ever since then, I've aspired to have that feeling with all my horses. Hey there, horse fiends. I just wanted to let you know that if you are enjoying this podcast, you should come and join us in the Powerful Equestrian Partnerships group on Facebook, Or you can even check out the Patreon community. I talk about it at the end, and the link is in the show notes. If you're a part of the Patreon community, you also can get access to the Dressage Naturally video classroom for less than the current monthly rate, and you get the support from the Patreon community. I just wanted to pop in and let you know those things were available to you. You can always check the show notes or listen to the very end of the recording. Let's get back into it. It's also important to notice when your horse is offering you impulsion, but you may feel like it's not safe. In that instance, the best thing you can do is find a way to redirect their energy. Or if you can't do that safely, then just stop. Because if you punish them for that, they will remember that the next time you want to ask for impulsion. If you watch the video of the last episode, and you can hear me talking about it, where he gets a little bit excited and he's kind of got his head up in the air and he's not really staying around and connected, but he's very excited to go and do what I want him to do, and he knows he can do it. So he's confident that he can do this. I want to shape that energy and say, oh, but could you do it like this? And if he tells me in that moment, no, I can't, I just need to go, and I can allow him to go safely, I do that, which is what happened in that episode. I allowed him to go. He got it. We were able to then come back and work that same exercise again. And he figured it out the next time. But if you feel like you can't safely allow that impulsion, then find a way to redirect it to somewhere else, or find a way to come back to your relaxation. Always be able to come back to the relaxation, because if you punish the horse for offering something that you do want, eventually, even if it's not in the form that you want it in, you're going to make your job much harder down the road. And as anyone with children knows, punishment is never fun. It also rarely works. It may be a deterrent in the moment. Sometimes you do have to use a form of punishment to create a boundary. But if you want to change a behavior, the best thing to do is to reshape it. The same is true with horses. I hope this episode helps you. If you've got any questions, reach out to me on the socials. You can email me, anna@equisenlightened.net. You can check me out on the Patreon. I will leave all the show notes, or all the links, in the show notes. I would love to help you in any way I can. I will see you next time for an episode on building the connection or the contact, and also keeping your suppleness and your rhythm while you're doing it. Happy riding! Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Come Ride With Me. I know there were some changes in audio quality at times because I had to dub in spots that were not clear in the original video/audio. I'm sure I'll get better at this recording thing as I go, so forgive my learning curve. My goal is to demonstrate to riders that we don't have to do something every second of a ride. We don't have to do things a certain way or at a certain time. Just staying present with your horse and gathering non-judgmental information about how they are going is way more beneficial than overthinking and overworking. If you'd like to learn more about what I do at Equus Enlightened, you can find me at equisenlightened.net or on patreon.com/equisenlightened. You can also find me on social media as Equus Enlightened. I will put all the links in the show notes. And until next time, happy riding. Oh, before you go, Please remember to rate, review, and share this pod so others can find it. I would love constructive criticism, but like my mom used to say, if you don't have anything really nice to say, there's no need to say it. Just ride on, my friends. Have a great week.